I remember standing at the back of the Artery in Edmonton, Alberta during the Western Canadian Music Awards conference, watching current buzz band The Deep Dark Woods run their set to an oversold room of enthusiastic head bobbers. I was there stalking the talent buyer for South by Southwest, who I heard and presumed would be in attendance. I was going to attempt to schmooze an introduction, a conversation, act interested, not desperate, name drop my band and imply that we're ready to make him look good if he brings us down this year. And he, in kind, implied that a band who is clearly all in, like the Deep Dark Woods, definitely had his attention. Whoops. Fast forward a year or two, and I'm in the basement of the Fairmont Hotel in Toronto, Ontario for Canadian Music Week. My band was present playing showcases, and I was out making meetings, dropping demos, trying to act important but not desperate, meeting with record label presidents in 15-minute speed dating like rituals, and fielding a familiar question lobbied back from my pitches of whether a new band of men in their mid-30s who still had their day jobs should be taken seriously enough to warrant a meeting. Ouch. Jacob Brodovsky has likely felt the same whoops and ouch as I did. A lifelong musician and songwriter and enthusiast who has floated through every adjacency to being an artist for perhaps more time than actually inhabiting the role of the artist. And if you define being an artist by the notion of legitimacy, by numbers, deservedness, by criteria that determines if you are really serious about the career, you can understand creative imposter syndrome much better because everyone is hedging their bets, which is valid. But when artistic legitimacy is communicated as immediate marketability, the word serious tastes very sour. Jacob is a singer-songwriter cut from the literal cloth of cleverly loose but deceptionally intentional songsmiths with a cutting tenor range and sharp instinct for a punchline, like his heroes in Death Cab for Cutie or The Weaker Thens. Raised in the richest indie culture neighborhood of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Jacob pushed his dreams to the forefront once, almost gave it up, but has come back with a perfectly aligned album of deep indie gold, Tell the Kids We Tried. The album is serious because now more than ever, Jacob is serious in all the ways that an artist is truly legitimate. My name is Glen Erickson. This is Almost Famous Enough. Thanks for spending your time with us. This is Jacob Brodovsky. First of all, hello. I guess I don't know if I even properly said hello while we were chatting there. Nice to meet you, Jacob.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, first time. You are you in Winnipeg right now?
Yeah.
Where are you? Okay. And so right off the bat, just to make sure I see your name and I think I'm going to say Jacob Brodovsky or Brodovsky.
Yeah,
Which
Brodovsky.
way is it? Keep it light, not a hard bro. Okay.
Not a hard bro.
Not a hard bro. Has anybody pulled
in name
the,
or in personality?
Oh, yeah, I guess there's a couple places I could have spun that one off. So you're in Winnipeg. This is our first introduction. And honestly, this is my first introduction to new music. So this is always really fun for me. So a bunch of points of interest for me to chat about. But the very first one I want to chat about, which I think is kind of cool. So you had actually reached out to me on Instagram, and I'm a total dick who didn't reply. But it you know how it goes into the requests thing?
The requests, yeah. Totally.
And I don't know they're there for a long time. So what's interesting to me is that the day after Ken, your publicist, had reached out to me, that the day after or even that night, I actually went into the Instagram requests and then there your thing was. So then I felt really stupid about that. But so I wanted to say right off the bat, Jacob, normally I would try to respond to those. I don't intend on being that guy. And I should say to everybody, like, Instagramming, DMing people if you want to talk to them or appear on their show or meet them of whatever the version of in this industry. I think it's totally cool, and sometimes people throw a little shade on just straight up just hitting somebody up, right? And I don't
Yeah.
know why. I think it's
Yeah,
have you had
I'm pretty shameless
success?
about it. Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also have my own radio show, so I have like that I book guests on, so I often
Yep.
just DM people. Yeah, I think you gotta ask, you gotta be polite about it, and you gotta be, you know, follow up maybe once, but then leave it if no one's responding. But yeah, I mean, it took me a long time to sort of really understand that, like, actually the only thing to make anything happen for yourself is to just ask and send emails and
Yeah.
do the thing. As long as you're gracious and polite, you know?
Yeah, well, you said that maybe the golden rule that I've kinda landed in there too, which is, like, the more important aspect is knowing, when to leave it alone
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
somebody, right? So
Yeah.
last summer, about this time, I went after George Stroumboulopoulos just
Oh,
as,
yeah.
like, I was on vacation, and I was
Mhm.
like, "I'm gonna" I was planning my season 2 out, and I'm like, "I'm gonna see if" big swing, "I'm gonna see if George would wanna talk to, like, a grassroots guy because he's always been kinda grassroots dude.
Mhm.
And then he responded. Like, I DM'd him on Instagram, and he responded. And then he asked if I wanna go tomorrow. Oh, well, I'm on vacation, I don't have any of my gear with me, I couldn't do a thing, I was
Yeah.
scrambling, I was gonna go down to the local, like, whatever the Radio Shack is now, Source,
Mhm.
whatever, in the town that I was in to see if I could buy anyhow, it didn't pan out, it didn't work out. So if you're gonna DM, I guess the other tidbit I'd pass around is, like, also make sure you're prepared if you get
Yeah,
an
totally.
answer. Lesson learned. Um, so you have new music coming out, Jacob. I wanna
Yeah.
talk to you about, that. I've been sitting and listening to some things, but right off the bat, just to sort of catch up a little more on who you are and where you came
Mhm.
from, your website introduces you as 3 things. You've already introduced yourself as one of those, a radio DJ.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're a musician, whether you call yourself singer-songwriter or what easiest thing it is to sort of translate yourself with in the music world. Um, and then also a Jewish camp, not counselor,
Ex-Jewish
manager,
camp director. Yeah.
ex Jewish camp director, which
Yeah.
plays into your storylines lately. But those are 3 very interesting ways to introduce yourself. I guess the first question is, which one of those do you feel like what came first? Which one
I mean,
of those were you first?
I've been in love with music for a very, very, very long time. I was actually I've got a song coming out next week, and I was putting together a video for it, of, like, old home movies, and there's an obnoxious amount of footage of me singing as a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old. So, definitely musician. I think it's taken me a while to come around to figuring out how I wanna sort of exist in the world as a musician, as a quote unquote, like, artist. But yeah, definitely identify to that first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I mean, if you ever, applied for American Idol, then you would have all this backstory gold, I guess,
Mm.
if you had all that
Hmm.
video footage. They love that stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, so when did the DJ thing happen? And the reason I ask out of interest for that is, like, I think I'm making an assumption maybe people think of campus DJs the way I do, which is a lot more transitory. It's not like a permanent job, although I
I mean, it's
know
certainly a volunteer gig,
some
yeah.
people it's a volunteer gig, and I know some people, I'm in Edmonton,
Mhm,
and, there's people who've had a show on CJSR here for, like, a couple
mhm,
decades,
mhm.
and you're right, it's volunteer, so it doesn't feel as much sort of a longer term or a deeper level commitment. What part of that, kinda has enough roots in you to make that part of your identity that you love, or
Um,
what is it about it?
I mean, I'm just really big into community. I really think that that's kind of the antidote to everything right now, and so, I mean, the CKUW thing I got into in 2019. I was working at a diner as a server, and, one of the line cooks had just gotten a new job as the program director at CKUW. And so he was hanging out at the bar one night after he was working, and I was sort of saying how I've always wanted to have a radio show, and I have this idea for a show. My show is called Let's Play DJ. So every week, a different guest on comes on, and they choose the music, and we listen to like 7 or 8 songs together and just talk about them. And that's the show. It's like an hour. We listen to tunes and we talk about them. We talk about songwriting. And so I was like, oh, I've always wanted to do the show. And he's like, oh, great, do it. And so he sort of forced my hand a little bit and set me up with the time slot. And I've just kind of stuck with it ever since. It's kind of been like a really nice constant for me. I've sort of had various relationships with my music career. Sometimes I've been really in it. Sometimes I've been really not. Like I have 2 kids, so I've definitely taken time off to be a dad. But the radio show has always just been really grounding, a really nice way to sort of stay connected to that world. And just a great way to hang. It's like whenever I'm like meeting new songwriters or musicians, my favorite way to get to know someone is to hear what they like to listen to, and sort of like nerd out on music together. So it's
Yeah.
just a nice way to spend time.
So is it weekly?
On paper, yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't. Lately, I'm not as productive as I should be, but generally, I do weekly, September to June.
That seems like that would be maybe difficult to fill that many weeks with, like, people. Is that a
Sometimes, I
challenge
mean,
booking?
sometimes I mean, there's Winnipeg's so rich with musicians and songwriters.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty lucky. I've got a pretty wide network of folks that I know, and it's a really easy pitch. Like it's a really like most musicians or artists are pretty
yeah,
down to talk about songs they like for an hour. So it's a
yeah,
pretty easy ask. And so yeah, I do it. So go back to what we were talking about before. I do a lot of Instagram DMing and just like cold emailing people's managers or whatever. I record it live when I can, but often I record it over Zoom like this. And yeah, so I'd probably average more to closer to like 30-ish episodes a year.
yeah, that's pretty
But
amazing, though.
yeah,
Does the playlist ever get, like, super diverse in a way that's hard to, like, string things together and you're like, "Oh,
oh,
shit, no
totally.
one's gonna I'm gonna lose everybody because 'cause they're listening to, like, who knows
I
what."
mean, that's kind of the beauty of college radio is like there's no expectations. You turn on
Yeah,
CKW at any point in the day,
exactly.
you could hear like country music, pop, singer-songwriter, and like weird experimental noise, to like
Yeah,
industrial krautrock. Like anyone tuning into college radio, I think kind of knows what they're in for. And to me, like the interesting thing for me, like as a host, but also as a listener is um those are my favorite episodes when it's like a folk artist who's like, exclusively listening to experimental jazz
yeah.
and like and sort of hearing how that commutes for them.
I was listening to a podcast, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, on the Pushkin Network with Dave Grohl in his studio,
Mhm.
and he was just talking about I don't know what he's talking about the guys that he's lucky to have had in his circle all this time, right? Like Pat Smear was a
Mhm.
hero of his, and now he's like, now I just get to hang out and he's my friend for all this time, which is amazing. And then I don't know where it came from, but you talking about that made me remember he was trying to get the interview. He's like, guess who Pat Smear's favorite artist is?
Hmm.
And then the guy's trying to like get some hints and stuff. And then he's like, you're never going to guess. It's Mariah Carey. And yeah, so you could end up in a conversation and you should never predict or guess what somebody's going to come in with. Right.
Mhm.
Have you had, let me think of some good Winnipeg folk like Begonia.
Mhm.
Has Begonia been on?
Yeah.
Do you
Had
remember?
Alexa a
Do you
couple
remember?
times.
Do you remember what kind of playlist she was bringing in?
She's done it a couple times. She did it once. Like we're buddies. So, but the most recent one we recorded in our kitchen. We had a really fun time. I'm trying to. She played a song by an artist named Saya Gray that I really loved.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was cool. We were listening to. She was mostly playing songs of like music that she was listening to when she was recording her most recent record.
Oh, that's a cool way
So it was kind of
to
cool. We sort of like
think
talked
about and
about
talk.
the process, and she spent a lot of time down in LA at that point,
Yeah.
and so we were kind of talking about that. But yeah, it's different every time, and I try to give as little direction as possible.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the third part of the triumvirate there is, as you has sort of clarified now, ex uh, Jewish camp manager. Um, I grew up in like the typical Christian camps, the
Hmm.
summer camps, and summer camp to me was like, I do, I want to know. I have this you know, personal curiosities, and at risk of losing my music listeners. But my personal curiosity, of course, is around. Um, I grew up at the Christian camps, especially as like a teenager.
Hmm.
They were really good at, you go for a week of these intense activities, intense social interaction, incredible lack of sleep. The food is usually a bit subpar. There's usually a number of interpersonal crises happening between people at that age group. And they let you go through all of it, and then hit you at the end with the big, heavy, emotional Jesus movement to try to get you to make a decision.
Right.
And obviously, the my understanding would be that the Jewish community isn't out there fervently trying to convert everybody
No, not at all.
from hell and stuff. So I'm wondering what Jewish camp looks like in the summertime for
I
a
mean,
teenager.
every camp's different. So the camp that I ran, I was the executive director of a camp for about 5 years. I went there. I worked there for 10. I attended for 25. Grew up out there. It was a Jewish community camp, so it's really non-denominational, non-movement based. It's really just like a camp for everybody.
Mm.
We had non-Jewish kids. We had Jewish kids. Difference was, we rested on Saturdays, not Sundays, kind of thing.
So it
Um,
was like just summer camp. Like you could drop the
Summer camp
Jewish. Is this
with the
you guys
it's
ran it?
summer camp with a Jewish twist. Like,
Yeah.
you celebrate Shabbat, you sing the brachas before meals and stuff. But like, we did canoe trips, ropes course,
Yeah.
kayaking, all that sort of thing. And I think
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, I think summer camp is just like, it's a really beautiful way for young people to spend their time. If it's run properly. I think some of the things that you described, I might not think so great about. But for us, it's like, creating a safe space for young people to explore their identity, to be themselves, to feel like they belong, to be part of a community,
Yeah.
and make sure we're teaching people to be kind and to care about each other, and to also like give a shit about the environment, and sort of,
Yeah.
like, I think that's something we tried a lot to do is drive home. It's like we were on an island in Lake of the Woods, this really beautiful part of
Mm.
northwestern Ontario, and we talked a lot about like look around, it's beautiful, but like, you know it's not gonna be here forever if we don't care about this stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, do you notice it's really smoky this week? It wasn't like that 10 years ago.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's really, one of the founders of the camp. He was a social worker in like the 70s or 60s, and his philosophy was like developing the individual within the group, which I really like. Sort of the idea of like,
Mm.
yeah, we develop like leadership and like self-esteem and all those things, through group work, through
Yeah.
trying to like solve problems with your friends.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I obviously was like tongue in cheek casting a pretty uh
I
saucy
mean, there's lots of
shadow
camps like
on the
that. Yeah, totally.
on that experience. But the flip side of that, me saying like, yeah, they take advantage of all those sort of aspects of uh, exhaustion and activity and blah
Hmm.
blah blah. But the truth is like there's a great value for anybody we as adults become very keenly aware of. If you could spend a week away
Totally.
unplugged from your regular
Totally.
life, then you create capacity inside yourself to like really drill in and maybe focus on some things that could really be of value that you could take away, right? So the
Totally.
opportunity to use that is like pretty exciting.
Yeah, when I used to try and convince parents to send their kids, I used to use the anecdote from like when I was a kid. I remember when I was 7. Camp is such a great way to like learn how to be independent. I remember when I was 7, sitting at the breakfast table, and it was like pancakes for breakfast, and sort of like looking around and being like, I'm gonna have to cut up these pancakes by myself. And I've never done that before.
Yeah.
It's like that's like sort of in a nutshell, like, that's what camp to me, that's some of the most valuable parts of camp is like,
Yeah.
in a safe way, kids sort of get to try things out and like take risks, and sort of test out independence and what that feels like. Because for a lot of kids, it's the only time they spend away from their parents.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. Um, so let's jump back to the musician part. You said like
Sure.
you have always been interested in music. Obviously, probably like most of us, at some point you go from, like you said, you're always going around singing, you have all this footage of you singing, you start to like put something on it. You start to hang something on it at some point. You want to actually create something, get those feelings of creating
Mhm.
something, get those feelings when someone else hears something you created, puts everybody on the trajectory, right, of some sort. Um, so how did that start to formalize for you to that point of realizing that maybe I could do this. Maybe I understand how people get this done. Maybe people are going to like when I sing. Like when did that sort of point happen? Right, that kind of gives you the kind of the wind in your wings to really start thinking about it and doing things about it.
It's a good question. I mean, it's almost more of a compulsion than anything else. I started my first band when I was 12. I started writing songs when I was or when I was 11. I started writing songs when I was 11. Basically have like all having like some sort of like musical outlet that also involved performance has kind of just been like a constant in my life since I was old enough to make that happen for myself.
Yeah,
I joke with my friends and like my partner, but it is true. Like I'm sort of I have a bit of an attention addiction. I like being on stage. I like being in front of people, and so
yeah,
music has always just been like a really great outlet for that. Songwriting has always just sort of been a thing that's felt very. I'm not like a virtuosic guitar player in any way. I'm okay, and I'm not. I've never been that interested in like practicing to be really good. But songwriting has always been, like writing lyrics has always been something that I've sort of come back to, and it doesn't really feel like work when I sit down to write. So I just kind of
yeah,
focused on that, and when you want to write songs, it's just sort of like by extension, you want to have an outlet so you can play and record and perform those songs, and that's sort of always been the thing for me. I didn't really become like a quote unquote solo artist until 2019 when like my last band kind of called it quits, and I really resisted that for a long time, but I'm kind of grateful that I took my time with it because especially putting my own name on it, it's sort of I'm glad I didn't sort of create an artistic identity for myself when I was younger and stupider.
um, well, I mean, that's interesting to me, like, because, you obviously you won an award, the Canadian Folk Music Awards
Hmm.
2024. The English, they have a nice discernment of that, between, of that distinction for Songwriter of the Year award, which
Hmm.
must have felt like $1,000,000 then if you're getting honored for the thing that you're choosing to identify the most with of all the kind of, hats that you wear to be an artist.
It felt great. At the time it was bittersweet because at that point I'd kind of given up on music. I wasn't really planning on making more music, and I didn't have any gigs on the books. I didn't have any songs written. I was sort of like kind of just hanging up my hat and being like, well, I'm a dad now. I have a job. Like, I shot my shot, and I'm content. I mean, I wasn't really, but I was trying to convince myself that I was.
Yeah.
So now it was actually kind of bittersweet when that award came through. But yeah, I mean, it feels amazing to be recognized like that. It was absolutely shocking to me. Um, but yeah,
Um, Tell me a little more about going through that phase. I mean, that's also kind of end of the pandemic. You released your first record in the
yep,
pandemic, right? 2022.
yep,
Is that I Love You, I'm Sorry? What's the
yeah.
right
I
way
love you,
to
and I'm sorry.
I Love You and I'm Sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've experienced this a whole bunch, right? I mean, I went through this and I sometimes feel if anybody got a peek inside, they'd be shocked at the stage. I'm still going through it of I had played in a band for a really long time, always been a musician, always everybody knew I was always pursuing that dream.
Hmm.
Um, Took a couple of little shots at making my own stuff. I never got I mean, there's a combination of things that happened for me. I didn't get maybe overwhelming feedback
Hmm.
and, uh, people don't probably realize just how crushing that is to maybe deal with because what you really want is, somebody to just you just want somebody to just hang a big big green light in front of you and make it easy.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
you put all, you put your soul into something and then it still doesn't feel clear. And
Yep.
that's difficult. And I had children and
Yep.
I had quit jobs to freelance and build my own career so I could also be at home and raise
Yep.
them. I was deeply invested. Felt a very strong responsibility to the family of not just effing off and trying to like be in music all the time.
Yep.
But it created this wrestling match that was almost unbearable inside for me. So I'm just wondering what your experience was like that, and you throw the pandemic issues of like, what's the point anyhow? Feeling we all had in with that. I can't imagine. But yeah, how did you kind of go through that and wrestle your way through
Yeah,
that?
I think wrestle is a really good word. Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I think. Like you know, I have always sort of, I would say until about 6 months ago, I would have never considered myself like really trying with like all my might to make music happen. It was always like I was doing it. I was writing songs, putting out records, booking tours, and all that stuff. But I also had another thing. I was also like running a camp, or I also had another job, and I was very, still to this day, I have very, very, very intense imposter syndrome. I'm like so lucky to be surrounded by some of my closest friends are wildly successful musicians, and like in Winnipeg, like sort of our
Hmm.
community.
Yeah.
Like I was at my friend Liam's house this morning, working on a mix for something, and like he's taught, this is like Boy Golden, like
Boy
the
Golden.
things that
Yeah.
he's dealing with, as an artist. It's like he's telling me about sort of like calls he's on or whatever, and it's crazy, Um, but all these people that I know, like Liam's a great example of that. Like they have been spending 100 hours a week since they were 18 on music, whether it was like practicing or writing. It's like they have been all in their entire life. And
Yeah.
I never felt like I was all in. Um, I never allowed myself to be, I guess. Yeah. So during the pandemic and when the record was coming out, I really allowed myself to like write this narrative of like, well, I finally made my solo record. I finally did a full length. I like it. I'm happy with it. I got to make it with some people that, that I still consider to be like heroes of mine and some of my favorite musicians in the world. And, I sold 100 and like, I did a little bit of touring when I got to go to Europe a couple times and stuff, but nothing really changed. And now I have a little baby boy and I have a stable job. And how can I justify trying harder? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I think I had convinced myself that was okay. I think it wasn't. I think that, the resentment I had for myself for making that decision kind of like oozed out of me in different ways. But yeah, it's sort of like, it's just like, it was just hard to justify at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Being a musician, writing, especially doing original music. It's one thing if you can be like a hired gun and like play for other people, like that's a job, that's a vocation. Like
Yeah.
that's a meaningful way to make a living. But if your only thing is like writing songs, which is mine, and sort of like, well, how could I justify spending all my time doing this or spending more money, you know, when I could be like
Yeah.
putting that away for like, you know, buying diapers.
Yeah. I mean, I fully relate with that. And the idea and the notion that like, how do I, how do I convince myself it's worth working harder or something? And I kept convincing myself, like, so I worked like nobody worked, right? Like I worked
Hmm.
all hours of the night. I did
Hmm.
all these
Hmm.
things that were adjacent because I had like you peers who were
Hmm.
involved, and so I started my own record label. I started promoting shows. I started managing some people. I started being a publicist at times. I was
Hmm.
on the boards of the everything. So,
Hmm.
but the adjacency never ever scratched the same itch as
No,
doing it, and
no.
the
In some ways,
working
it makes it
hard.
worse.
Yeah, it does. It 100% it
Hmm.
makes it worse in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And I found out that I could work harder, and I found more
Hmm.
time to work harder. And then I started to realize that came at the sacrifice of some things that I had to question if I was going to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then it became really clear to me that really it was about, whether I was willing to work as hard or whether I was actually willing to risk. Because all it really
Totally.
comes down to is the sacrifice you eventually have to make
Yeah.
to jump off the cliff, right?
Yeah.
And to trust stuff,
Yeah.
which is really hard. And I think, and I drill into this topic only because I think a lot of people have some variation of it, and it's worth
Hmm.
talking about that.
Yeah.
Um, the the imposter syndrome is like in our heads, it's extremely toxic. I mean, it gets talked
Hmm.
about just as a condition normally
Hmm. Hmm.
around, but in our own narratives, it gets really toxic, I think.
Hmm.
And um, I think it's important for people to realize that there is a version you can get to of accepting that not everybody is the full-time sold out. I've been in bands since I was 15
Hmm.
and this is all I've ever done version, as if that's the only authentic version of an artist, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
totally. And
And
I
it's
think that
it's
idea is
not.
becoming, I think it was for a long time. And I think it's becoming more and more acceptable as being an artist is less and less, financially stable or viable.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's becoming, I think for a long time the quote unquote industry really only took you seriously if you were fully in it full time. And I think more and more people are starting to challenge that. And I think it's a really good thing. I think it's a really healthy thing.
Yeah, well, that
Um,
was enforced by the industry by literally the rhetoric of, because I remember being in conversations with people and they were like, they wouldn't take our band seriously if we hadn't like all quit our jobs,
Totally,
you know?
totally. Yeah,
And
yeah. And it's like,
that's kind of toxic bullshit, right? Is that you're telling everybody like you have to go and make these kinds of very dire life changing decisions before we'll even consider you worthy of our
I think
time.
it's both. I think it's both. I had a conversation with the artistic director of Winnipeg Folk Fest, and when I was, heavily lobbying him to to book me, and the first thing he said is just like, "How serious are you? Like, how much time are you spending on this? Like, how in are you?" And I, I, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing for him to ask. He has like a very limited amount of slots especially for local artists. And there's a ton of people
Yeah.
that want the slots. And it's like, I get it. Like, you only want to book people that are like, that are actually doing this, um, and so, but at the same time, yeah, it's like when I think it's everyone in the industry operates that way. One thing for like a slot is at a festival. I think it's another thing for like, um, funding or for like, label deals or
Yeah.
whatever.
No, I think that's a great distinction, Jacob. I think um, anybody taking the risk and reward of their own job seriously would ask the right questions about whether,
Hmm.
if they're
Yeah,
going to take a risk on you or put any
exactly.
investment in you, they want to know that you're good for it.
Yeah, and
Um,
they're gonna make the
but
most of it, right? Because like otherwise they'll just
yeah,
give it to someone else.
which is slightly different than creating a standard implication across the industry
Yes.
of like, you
Yes.
have to kill yourself for this
Yes.
thing or else we won't
Yes.
accept you, which,
Yes.
has traditionally lived in some pockets also. But,
Totally.
um, I mean, yeah, that's interesting stuff. I do think it is, you're right, a different time
Mhm.
right now, which is a lot better for people, you know, again, I think that's sometimes where the adjacency comes where people start working in the industry to pay the bills while they keep trying to,
Yeah.
pursue the thing. And then some of them just
Yeah.
get sucked back into just doing in the industry. But that's
Yeah.
just kind of been the way, right? But that way
Yeah.
is definitely changing. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this right now because I was thinking about it while you were talking about that, which is interesting because you were joking like I only sold 100 records,
Hmm.
but you found your way back again to making another record, which I want to talk about with you right now. But I reserve this kind of a comment like for almost never. I should just preface to say, and especially I find it of interest because I didn't know who you were before. Winnipeg, you tell me an artist is from Winnipeg, and I'm
Hmm.
always going to immediately give them the benefit of the doubt and listen.
Mhm.
But I started listening to the pre-release copy of your new album, and I'm going to just go right out there and say, like, this is a record I think everybody should hear.
Oh, that's very nice.
I just wanna say sincerely, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass because 'cause we're talking live right now. There's things that I hear in there that are the foundations and the components of some of the greatest acts that I've listened to over
Oh,
time. Like, specifically that I immediately heard Benjamin Gibbard's voice in a lot of
mhm,
your delivery of Death Cab for
mhm,
Cutie, and then even, like, it's still fresh because I just got out of the car with it, your song "Lack Thereof." I was, like, listening to that, and I'm like, "Man, even the shaping of this melody sounds Death Cab to me, and the delivery."
mhm,
And you have a very, and you have a high tenor that sometimes you get soft on the edges with and flutter on a couple songs, more so on your last record when I listen to some tracks, but
mhm,
you're leaning more into the sharpness of the edges on that
mhm,
vocal delivery. That
mhm,
sounds like Ben Gibbard, or what I'm sure you've heard a ton being from Winnipeg, of John K. Samson Fellows. So
yeah,
of the weaker
totally.
thens. And I literally, for anybody who's listening who has any, and like those bands have deeply impacted so many people.
Mhm.
Um, it's not it's not like Jacob, it's not the knockoff version of I'm trying to sound like those. It's to me like, um, it sounds just so like just pure.
Oh, that's
Like
very kind.
anyhow, so before we even just get into talk about it, because it was
Mhm,
on my mind and I don't mind saying it, um, I this is like a, and I want to talk about your recording of it and stuff, but it's like it's layered so incredibly well, like the guys from Moon River.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so like Gavin and Champagne, Champagne
Champagne James.
James, yeah. Obviously they're incredible. I had watched them play with Peter Dreams on their tour
Yep.
last summer and had Peter on the podcast, and like James's playing is should be better known in this country as
I agree. I
like
agree.
epic, like,
Otherworldly. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just, when you see skill
Mhm.
get executed effortlessly, but then you realize that it's all being driven by taste, which is like a whole nother,
Yeah,
like,
totally.
how
Totally.
does somebody have all of that happening at the same time so impeccably all the time? Um, anyhow, so every song that I've heard so far is like delivered on that record with just what feels like a perfect choice of layering and depth and stuff. So I guess before we even get into the record, being a solo artist, deciding I'm going to take another run at this, um, how do you handle, like, I just made this incredible record, and then how do you handle the now what do I do with it? Do I have to tour a band because I only want it to sound like this record now? How do you approach heading into the release of a record? What do I do with this great thing that I've made?
I mean, thank you. That's very, very kind. I really appreciate that. Especially now that you're one of the few people that's heard it, so it's relieving to hear that it resonated with you. Um, how do I approach? I just ask a lot of friends, really, and I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do anything anymore, and I think it's kind of all irrelevant. You just have to decide.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bunch of touring this summer. I'm playing a lot of festivals. I'm not playing a single festival with a band, full band. Most of the festivals I'm playing, I'm doing in like trios or quartets where it's like one guitar and harmony and like three
Mm,
voices. Um, to me, that's like the joy and the excitement of being a solo artist is you get to there is no there's less of an expectation of what you're showing up with.
yep.
And I think that's exciting to me. Like I want to me for someone to come discover me at a festival playing like hardcore a hardcore folk set, like not there's lots on the record, there's synths, there's guitar pedals, there's very few acoustic instruments really. um but to me it's a folk record and the songs are folk songs, and to be able to present those that way and then have someone buy the record and then listen to it and get a completely different experience, like to me as a listener, that's what I look for when I find an artist. So that's sort of what I'm striving for. Like I think
Mm.
the test of a good song, and I'm not saying I achieve this, but I think the test of a good song is you should be able to dress it up anyway, and it should still translate and make people feel things. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Mm.
Also, bands are just expensive.
Oh, yeah, that's the other part right now, right? Like
Yeah,
the idea of
yeah,
like touring with a bunch, yeah, like there's just such an overhead to
yeah.
people and this stuff. So the new record that's coming out July 10th, I think.
Yeah.
Tell the Kids We Tried, which is a fantastic sentiment for an album title. And even if I hadn't read some of the pressers, I would have
Hmm.
figured out after about 4 songs that you were writing from what sounds like a place of existential dread, or at least choosing to exercise it in your songwriting.
Yeah.
Makes me think of a couple of like Dan Mangan records a lot, where he's tried to go through the same process, and
Hmm.
he talks openly about it a lot. So just I think what's interesting is, I want to know more than just the presser I got to read.
Sure,
Obviously, like
sure.
the idea that um, something had happened that you're now calling it an ex-Jewish
Hmm.
camp counselor or camp manager, and some of the things you were going through, and just the way you were looking at the world with bringing kids into the world. But I read that the songs kind of even preceded some of that, and then just sort of fulfilled themselves. So
Yeah,
that's it. That to me is very curious right there, because you know whether we know it or not, there's like a thread running through our lives that we end up being
to-
able to connect sometimes later in time,
totally.
which I find so interesting, the way songwriters discover that in their life and their songs at different points in time. So just tell me about how this unfolded then, like between choosing to write the songs, and and going through some pretty monumental life stuff
Yeah,
along the way.
yeah. And so it's interesting you picked up on that. So generally speaking, my rule with writing is like you can't really write a song about an experience until it's over and until you've like sort of processed it. Um, at least that's sort of how I feel when I sit down to write a song. But what sort of happened with this record? I had a whole batch of songs prepped and ready to go. We demoed a bunch of them. Some of them stuck around, like songs like "Kids" and "Beneath It All," and a couple others had been around for a while. But most of the songs on the record actually were only written 2 to 3 weeks before we tracked them. And that was because I'm in this songwriting exercise group called Song Every Week Club with a bunch of us in Winnipeg. We all do it
Mm.
together. Usually every
That sounds
December,
like a
January.
Liam thing.
Yeah, Liam's in there. Yeah, a bunch of us are in there. Because it's just we all need motivation to write, or no, we don't need motivation, but we hold each other accountable through this thing. So basically, the idea is our friend Natalie from a band called Slow Spirit, which is like one of the greatest bands in the world. Um, she usually administers it, and we all get on the email thread, and it's like, okay, Tuesday night before bed, everyone has to submit a brand new song. It cannot have existed beforehand. You have to write a song this week and submit it. It doesn't need to be finished. It doesn't need to be polished, but it needs to be something. And if you don't submit it by the deadline, you're out. And then
Yeah,
after the
so
deadline,
Liam talked about this with me. I'm remembering it
okay,
now, that if you don't
yeah,
submit, that's the thing, you
yes,
don't get to come, and then that sucks. And
yes.
so
And
it
so and
motivates
and,
you
and
to
you don't
write.
you don't get the playlist with everyone else's songs. And the
Yeah.
rules are very strict. Like you cannot show each other's songs to anyone else. Like it's very like private because you're writing a song and sharing it immediately with your friends and peers is like a very scary thing to do. But I think it's also a really great exercise in humility, which I think is another reason why Winnipeg is such a strong music scene right now because
Yeah.
there's so much humility in our music scene. But I'm digressing.
Well, that
So
it protects the sanctity of that moment too,
totally,
right? If
totally,
of what kind of your feedback will be. So,
totally. And so I ended up writing. And so when you're writing a song on a deadline like that, you don't really have time to think about what you're writing about in the same way. It's not,
mhm.
there's not as much intentionality. It's much, at least for me, it's much more just like stream of consciousness. You're just kind of like tapping into your subconscious and going, kind of like letting your pen do its thing. Um, and so I think for that reason, I wrote a lot of songs that were sort of picking up on what was coming, because sort of the writing was on the wall a little bit in the community I was working in, and just the world in general, and sort of the tone of the world, and also how I was feeling and thinking about the world, and things that were happening. And so for, a lot of songs on the record, like Lack Thereof, and Older Too, Past Mistakes, in a lot of ways, they sort of talk about that in a very, like, sort of run out sort of way. And then so we made the record in January, fast forward to April. And without getting into it too much, basically the day my kid was born, my phone started blowing up because someone had taken screenshots of me liking Instagram posts promoting a concert in Winnipeg that was raising funds for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund.
Mhm.
And in certain corners of the Jewish community, that is like a really unacceptable thing to be doing. And so I essentially resigned about a week later, because the harassment that I was and my family was experiencing, both like online and also like in
Mm.
person, was just like, it was like, this is nothing is worth this. And also, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, raising money for kids. Um, I think I said to one person, sort of like, my job is to, as a camp director, is to treat, 300 children like they're my own, and care for them like they're my own. And so I'm not going to apologize for extending that to every child.
Yeah.
Um, and not picking and choosing. So anyway, so while I get off my soapbox, so basically, and then so when all that kind of happened, I was, we were mixing the record, and it was sort of like, oh, this is what that song's about, like
Mm.
this is what was going on. But it really only happened that way, I think, because all these songs, we just kind of, and again, this is credit to Gavin and James, just like really pushed me to, like, you know, throw caution to the wind and just like lean into like brand new material and let the band arrange it in the room in the moment and hit record. And so I think, how this record is different from my last record is like labored over for years, and the songs were written over like a 5-6 year period.
Yeah, everyone's
And so
first
it's
record is their greatest
everyone's first
hits,
record.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I really, like, labored over every note and every measure, and every overdub. And this record was like the exact opposite. It's like, let's get in a room. I'm going to play you the song on an acoustic guitar. Let's spend 3-ish hours arranging it. And then we're going to hit record on a tape machine and track it. And it's the tape. So we can't even fix stuff afterwards, even if we want to,
Yeah.
and
Well, you can, but oh my god, it's a pain in the
well, yeah,
ass.
you can, but I can't afford to pay someone to.
No one
So,
can afford to
uh,
split
yeah,
tape, yeah.
exactly. So, and so, yeah, and so, yeah, and I think, again, like a lot of the production choices and stuff, we just kind of leaned into the spontaneity of it, and it was a really fun way to make a record. But I think that's
Did you have equal say in your arrangements? Like, there's 3 of you primarily. Was it
yeah,
very
I would say, even I would,
democratic?
for the most part, I would even extend that to Jason and John, who played on the bulk of the record. Jason Tate, who plays drums with Bahamas and the Weaker Thans, and John Barron, who plays with William Prince and Begonia. Um, it was really the 5 of us in a room in a circle for 7 days, kind of just like kind of taking it apart, and putting it back together. I think this is another Liam quote, but I asked Liam about the role of a producer, because I'd never worked with a producer before, and Liam's produced a ton of records, and he's very good at it. And he said, a producer's job is, to advocate very hard for their ideas, because that's why you hire a producer, is for their ideas and for their, for them to put their stamp on it. But
Yeah.
they should also know that at the end of the day, it's the artist's songs. And so he's like, he's like, when I work with an artist, I always say I'm gonna advocate really hard for my ideas, but I'm not gonna like die on that hill.
Yeah.
You know, and that's sort of how it was with Gavin and James. They're, big advocates, and invaluable input that they brought, and like the record would not be what it is without them. It was a truly joyous experience working with them. I mean, the only reason why the record was made at all was because Gavin essentially forced me to. Like Gavin and I had known each other because he had mastered my last record. And
Okay.
so 2 summers ago, he texted me. He was like, "Hey, are you working on any new songs? I've got this new thing. We're trying to find some like production clients and wondering if you'd be interested." And I said, "Nah, not really. I'm not really doing that anymore." And he's like, "Well, do you have any demos or anything? Like, just send me something." So I sent him a couple tunes, and he basically got back to me and said, "If you can like fly yourself to Toronto, you can stay with me for free. and me and James would just like to spend a couple days in the studio with you, and just no pressure, just the three of us. And if you like what we did, then maybe we can make a plan and work something out. But really, just to come for fun. And so I went for like 36 hours because I wasn't going to let I had like a 2-year-old at the time. I was going to leave my wife alone with him for too long. And then after that, we did that for a day and a half, and then they took me out for lunch, and they're just like, we really want to make this record with you, and let's figure out a way to make it happen. And so it really
Mm.
was thanks to them that this happened at all. And so, I felt very beholden to them in the studio too. That like they were being incredibly generous with their time and their expertise. But it really did feel like a group effort. Like it was sort of like, for that week we were a band.
Um, who are who who's your influences? I guess there's two ways to ask that because you even mentioned how you came into your first record, and I think a lot of people, I've said this a number of times on my podcast, of we all sort of, especially when we're early, we're mimicking, right, with our
Hmm.
songwriting is with sort of
Hmm.
the first sort of baby phase of that.
Hmm.
um until you start to find your own voice consistently, but
Hmm.
we still end up having influences. So I'm just kind of wondering, who are your influences? Maybe they're still the same ones around songwriting, or maybe particularly like who you were listening to, similar to your, with Alexis story of who you're listening to when you went into that record. Because you
Hmm.
you said you ditched the majority of a batch of songs and decided to run with these more recent ones, which could
Yeah.
get heavily flavored by, you know, number of
Hmm.
things you might be going through. I'm curious who that was or what that was.
Um, like it changes. My number one, I mean, you named them. Like Death Cab and the Weekend Ends were two massive bands for me in high school, and I think there's something about the bands that you discover when you're first discovering your own music taste that they kind of don't go away. It's kind of like in your DNA. And I mean, for me, like Death Cab is huge, but like the Weaker Thans, in my opinion, are like one of the greatest bands to ever exist. And I think John Sampson
Yep,
is one of the greatest songwriters alive.
agreed.
And I've been fortunate enough, he's become a very dear friend of mine and a mentor to me, and which is a mind fuck in itself. I hope it's okay that I swear in here.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
so so those are my number. That's my number one always. And
Mm.
if I can write a song half as good as John, I'm very happy. Outside of that, I listened to when we were making this record. I was listening to a ton of like Charlotte Cornfield, um, uh, Laura Marling, the Weather Station. And then like, again, like Wilco is a huge band for me and always has been and always will be.
Mm.
Actually, I'll pull up. We made a playlist, me and Gavin and James, of like references when we made the record. They put some cool stuff on it too. Um, Sparkle Horse, Kevin Mormy, Twain is a huge. I was listening to a ton at the
Did you say
time.
Kevin Morby?
I said Kevin Mormy, but I meant Kevin Morby. Yes.
Yeah, so I was
Um,
just listening to him yesterday, and my partner
cool.
was like, "This sounds like the Weaker Thans," and I was
Yeah.
like, and I hadn't put those two together, so that's kind of cool.
And like Big Thief.
Okay,
I
yeah.
love Big Thief. And then locals, like I love Begonia, I love Slow Spirit, I love Field Guide, I love Boy Golden. Dominique Adams, who I've written a ton of songs with, and she's all over the record. I'm hugely influenced by
Mm.
her. I think she's a genius. Um, we're so lucky in this town to have so many incredible songwriters. And you know, Madeline Rogers, another one, and a dear friend, Leith Ross. Um, So yeah, kind of all over the place. Honestly, at the time too, I was huge into Boy Genius when we were making that record. I friggin' loved that band.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of all over the place. But influences, yeah, I just think people that write from a real place, and I think with a lot of artists, first record's always great, and then you can always tell when an artist's ego starts to grow, because it comes out in their songwriting. Um, and artists that are able to avoid that are usually the ones that I'm drawn to.
Well, I'm interesting if you can articulate the way what you mean by that. Like for me, I think quite often it's most obvious with songwriters. There's songwriters who like to be a little bit clever. I mean, I think even
Mhm.
in your music, you tend to favor being
I
a
go
little
for the
clever. And
chuckle.
how could you not if you've listened to the Weaker Thans on repeat
Mhm.
for a long time, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, the greatest line maybe ever, right? Which is like, I don't know what I should do with my hands when I talk to you.
When I
You
talk
don't
to
know where
you,
you
you know
should
where should
look, so you
so
look at
you
my
look at my
hands.
hands? Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah, it's
un
the best.
in a song, like unbelievable. But so I think that when someone starts to take themselves too seriously, like the things get a little too clever, they get a little too shticky or stuff like that. I'm wondering
Yeah,
how you think about, people taking themselves too seriously.
I agree. I think for me, it's about editing, and that's the one thing that John has taught me and has been and is so good at is editing.
Mm,
It's like a song is never finished. That like every syllable should count. Every syllable has to be important. When he like I asked him basically to like edit my entire record, my first record, and he said he would on the one condition that he was allowed to be brutal. And so he would, he would come over, he would have printed my lyrics out and would just have like red pen through stuff. And it was so valuable. And of course, it's like your hero. It's like, man, yes, anything.
yeah,
But it was so valuable. And I never really thought about that. For me, it was like, I write a song, third verse finished, great, it's done. I wrote the song. And for him, it's like, no, no, no. And then you spend, 18 months refining it and editing it
yeah.
and strengthening it. And I think that's why his music is so good. And so that's, but I think when you lose that, when you think that you are so good that you don't need to be edited or you don't need to,
Mm,
ask peers for feedback or accept criticism, I think that's when you start to lose it. And I think you can hear that in people's songs
mm,
when you could be like, oh, that would like, they're not getting away with that, and I think they are.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so I think, I mean, it's interesting, like, and not in a name droppy way. Like you even talked about so many people that have played on this record coming
Yeah,
out
not
that
in a name droppy
essentially
way.
that, but you didn't, but it's just that they've all played for everybody who seems to really be breaking out right now out of Winnipeg, like Begonia Boy Golden, William Prince. Like these are like
Yeah.
people who are like winning the Junos and getting
Hmm.
the top
Hmm.
awards and getting
Hmm.
recognized and I mean, it's all sort of shifts and cycles, all along. I mean, Winnipeg's had a number of strong seasons of this over the last
Yeah.
few decades, which is amazing to be a part of the fabric of that.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm curious as you kind of go into this quote unquote cycle, even though it looks different in today's day and age of you're going to release a record and then everything it goes from creating to marketing, right?
Totally.
And
Totally.
again, like you love attention, so I'm sure that's not completely intimidating for you if you don't mind, the attention game a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be
Totally.
a little soul sucking for some people in the music
Yeah.
business, but other people it comes a little more naturally. But I'm curious about the shift for you, if you can just tell me. I guess it's the one other big thing I'm just curious about your story. I mean, you talked about what happened with um, your community and the Jewish community around the
Hmm.
camp and having to resign because, you know, it sounds to me even like your stance wasn't even like a hardcore, like pulpit type stance. It was more just like, I just did a normal decent thing, which indicates what I believe about the world.
Yeah.
Um, but when you decide that you're just going to stand on it, then
Hmm.
you make choices,
Hmm.
your community changes and your community changing is really, really difficult. I mean,
Hmm.
like I used to work in a church. Like my dad's a preacher. I
Hmm.
grew up in the
Hmm.
same vein. I
Yeah.
thought that that's where I was headed. I loved people too.
Hmm.
I started to work in a church, and after like 5 years, I couldn't do it anymore.
Hmm.
And at that time, this is a long time ago, but like in the churches wouldn't give women any position of authority. They wouldn't.
Right.
Everybody was trying to force me to get ordained as a minister, but they
Hmm.
wouldn't ordain women, and I was, that wasn't the only thing. It was also the treatment of homosexuals and homosexual rights,
Sure.
among
Yeah.
other things. Um, and I left, and I was shocked how quickly the community left me. Right? It was a real
Yeah.
shock to my system, like because
Yeah.
you have such built-in community just by having the job. And
Yes.
you can mistake how meshed those two actually are or not until
Yep.
you make a choice to leave
Yep.
and and it feels like everybody leaves you. And
Yep.
fast forward for me, like my experience in music was I was in a band that was touring around the country and doing really well
Mhm.
and critically acclaimed couple of records, 7, 8 years later, then it
Mhm.
ends. And I think I'm just going to roll into the next thing.
Mhm.
It doesn't roll. The community
Yeah.
doesn't feel, and I haven't talked about this one very much because I'm always, maybe right or wrong, afraid of shooting yourself in the foot with people you're
Mm.
still involved with. But
Mhm.
you feel a little bit abandoned because you're not doing
Yeah.
the thing that they all cared about so much anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious for you at your stage of life and like you've gone through some of this stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
You talk about how great the music community is there, but you know, heading into like the energy and the vibe and the stuff you have to get behind sharing your music shamelessly. Um, how does the how does community play into that for you now? Is it a place of like emptiness that you're or have you found something else or some new things that's kind of giving you the supports you need to go into that?
I mean, yeah, it's such a good way of putting it. I left the community, and then I was surprised at how quickly the community left me. I think that, yeah, I can identify with that very strongly. For me, the music community and the creative community in Winnipeg, just like, and not just me, like my whole family, my wife and my kids, they just scooped us up.
Mm,
We were at Folk Fest last summer backstage. My 2-month-old was just being passed around. Like it really, it was such a, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Like it was just such a beautiful time. We felt just very held and very supported by the people here. Um,
mm,
People we knew well and people we didn't. But just like, really like, and people were throwing me gigs. Like it was just like, um, we felt very held by the community here.
mm.
And it was our first time being in Winnipeg in the summer in 15 years. So we'd never really been around for for festival season. And so we just got to hang out with our friends every weekend and bring the
Yeah,
kids, and like it was beautiful. It was awesome. And so in many ways it was just reinforcing what I kind of already knew, which is like these are our people,
yeah,
and we all care about the same thing. And so when you talk about the rollout of the record, to me it's all about community. It's all about playing with each other, different configurations of bands, trying to include as many people as possible. Um, and I think the thing that a lot of us in town kind of understand, and we talk about this a lot, is it's like, so now I'm in a season of self promotion, so I'm taking a lot out of the community, right? But that's only okay because I've spent time contributing, and once my release cycle is over, I will go right back to just like trying to pump everyone else's tires as much as possible.
yeah,
And so as long as we're all sort of continuously reciprocating that and being mindful of that, and also like being mindful of just like, I mean, I'm like a straight white dude, singer songwriter. Like I'm not, I gotta be aware of how much space I'm taking up, and making sure I'm leaving room for other folks whose voices are much more important than mine. But I think if you're cognizant of that, and I think a lot of us in town are, that's sort of where things
mm,
work, because it doesn't feel like I'm stepping on anyone else
yeah.
to have my own voice heard. It just feels like I'm asking for a leg up, and as soon as I like say my thing, I'm gonna like get right back down and let someone else have a turn.
That's pretty great. I mean, I sincerely hope though that like you get a pretty good leg up. I mean, I don't know what the plan is to sort of break out past the circles you've been able to saturate up till this point, but like I reiterate what I had said earlier, like I think it's a record that a lot of people should hear and I think a lot of people are going to be able to appreciate like there's just um I use this word a lot lately. There's an alignment to me when, you know, the delivery of the vocal feels like what the intent of the words is, because that's not
Mm,
always the case on a record.
mhm, mhm,
And the layers of the arrangement, sound like they were already made,
Mm,
pre-made for just that exact sentiment. And that kind of alignment doesn't always happen. So I'm obviously going to be pulling for you to get that out. I mean, I know
I appreciate it.
you obviously have Ken, best publicist in the world. No offense to the other publicist friends that I
Yeah,
have, but he was my publicist, so everyone knows why I'm
nice.
allowed to say that. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, getting him on board is uh, pretty great choice going forward. I was gonna play a game with you. I thought that would be fun because sometimes I play games with people on here, and since there's so much talent coming out, I thought I'd um, put a little pressure on you and make you play like fuck Mary kill with like three different Winnipeg artists. But I'm not gonna do that at all because
I, I,
we just had this beautiful community sentiment, and that would be the absolute worst to be like,
I
now
appreciate
I
it.
want you to like
Yeah,
separate them into, yeah, I'm obviously not gonna do that. Um,
grateful.
so what has this changed your outlook on what's past this record with the music now? You said at one
Yeah,
point, I'm not sure if I'm gonna can even keep doing this. Has the process of making this record changed how you feel now about being in the game and answering those music execs how serious you are about things?
totally, totally. It really has. I think what I've learned in the, I mean, when I decided to make this record, and didn't have a ton of like grant support or anything really. I was really just kind of trying to scrape stuff together and do it myself. Basically, I said to myself, I was like, I want to make this, and ideally, in a perfect world, this will generate enough whatever it needs to generate to justify making another one. I just like making music. I like writing music.
Mhm.
Going into the studio with your friends is the best thing in the world. I would love to be able to justify continuing to spend time and money doing that. It's essentially, and I would say I think that's kind of already happened. Playing Winnipeg Folk Fest this summer is like that's top three bucket lists of all time for me. Like that is something I've wanted to do since I was old enough to know what it was.
Mm,
I've been going to that festival since I was 1 years old, and so like stuff like that. That's like I don't want to use the word like life changing because it's cliche, but like truly I wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I'm like folk fest. Like it's the best.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, and so I think for me it's like I work part-time as a consultant. I consult for other camps. I work for myself. My schedule is very flexible. I do some tour booking for other folks. um I'm starting my own kind of little camp thing with my partner, hopefully soon. And so I think for me it's like I think what I'm learning is like I want to have a creative life. I want to live a creative life. I want to spend every day doing something creative. Um, I don't think I could feed both of my kids and pay my mortgage by just writing songs. And I don't think that my mental health can can withstand the pressure of needing to do that. Um, but I think I'm kind of figuring out how to supplement that. Like, the camp that I'm
Mm,
consulting for right now is a all girls punk rock camp in California that like it's all like their whole thing is about like female empowerment and like getting more women into the music industry and like taking like teenage girls and putting them in bands. And they need some help with like camper recruitment and retention and sort of some staff training stuff. So it's like I'm helping them with that, but it's like I'm
mm,
still in the world that I care about. Um, and so I think just trying to figure out more ways to do that. Like even this past weekend, I was up north. I did like a songwriting workshop with a bunch of kids in the paw with some pals. And so I think there's ways to do it, and I'm just kind of I think since leaving this job, as great as it was, and as much as I loved it, it has been liberating in a way as well. And so being able to sort of just have all my own time and work for myself has been a really wonderful experience so
mm.
far. Also hard and terrifying, but yeah, definitely like I got lots of touring on the books for the next 6 months and lots of festivals and lots of plans for more. So it feels nice to kind of be kicking the can again.
That's awesome. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a real pleasure to talk to a music pursuer who's like a dad first and
Hmm.
a community support the music community guy second. Um, just because I've burned a lot of years off of my life doing those exact same things. So uh, I appreciate the open, candid conversation.
Oh, likewise.
Allowing me to pry in a little bit to the hows and the whys, and just figuring out a little more about your story and where you came from with this. So, um, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing the record come out, being able to share it with people, and I wish you all the success. And maybe one of those tour stops will be something I run across. I've been meaning, by the way, to get to the Winnipeg Folk Fest forever. Like, little known fact, I actually designed that website about 8 years ago for
Oh,
them.
nice.
They just took it over, and they've been running the
Yeah.
same one. I don't usually say that stuff out loud because
Yeah.
organizations usually like run their websites into the dirt after they, and then I don't want to claim it was mine, but
Yeah.
they've kept it pretty neat and clean. I have to give it to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been a fan of how they book their folk fest lineups too, and would have always loved that. But so that's an exciting thing for you. I think that's early July as well, right? When that normally
Yeah.
runs.
So the record comes out on the 10th, and that's the weekend I'm playing. So it's sort of
Oh,
a
how
I'm
perfect.
doing the release kind of at the festival, which will be nice.
Oh my God, that's so perfect. Great.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I wish you all the best, Jacob. Thanks so much for the time
Thanks, Glenn.
talking here and getting to know you, and hopefully it's not the last time.
Right on. Appreciated the chat. All the best.
You bet.
Hey, I'm Alexi. Stick around for post fame with me and my dad.
What? You don't get to do that.
Hi, welcome to Post Fame with Alexi. How are you?
Well, I'd be better, except you waited until like we hit record to sound sweet, but before that, you were totally dissing your old man.
Oh, so
You
you
literally
made it.
called me an old man
Mm-hmm.
and suggested that I'm a tired old guy who falls asleep at his computer all the time by 7 o'clock.
Happens sometimes.
Isn't true. It's usually like by 9:30. And
Mm-hmm.
then I just plug through because I'll get a second wind
No.
and carry me through to midnight.
See, and I just go to bed at 9:30 and listen to my body, so it's gonna be okay.
Your body doesn't get extra work done when it's sleeping.
No, but I get more work done because I'm more energy during the day.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, it's because I'm awesome.
I wonder.
Welcome to my episode of 46.
Your episode of 46?
Yep.
I wanted to send you the awesome, you're awesome from Mr.
Oh,
B
from Mr. D.
right there, but then I thought I'll screw the lyrics up
Sometimes I sing
anyhow.
that to myself when I did something I was like scared to do.
Like it's in your head. You just
No, I sing it out loud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think
Brilliant.
very soon into dating, like, my boyfriend was like, "WTF?" But I also have a chant I do, but we'll save that for a different episode.
Because you were singing it to yourself, not to him, even.
Yeah, he doesn't get that chant, only
Oh,
me.
okay.
Yeah, 'cause I'm awesome.
Legit,
Yep.
valid.
So do you wanna hear something?
Yep.
And this is my only, like, it's not even rude, this is my only, like, not positive constructive thought about your,
Oh boy.
episode 46. Episode
Oh
of
boy.
46. But, when you guys started chatting, like, right at the, like, well, okay, the first, like, 10 minutes, you were talking about music and, like, him as, like, an artist and his identity.
Yeah.
I was like, "Good stuff." And then right around the 20-minute mark, I was like, "Are you guys gonna get back to music?" Because you asked about, like, because he said he has the 3 parts of identity.
Yeah.
And then the third one was the ex-Jewish camp counselor and, like, that whole part of his life.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, took that rabbit hole, which, like, as you should, it worked in the grand scheme and it's part of him. But there was just a moment where I was just like, I feel like we've been talking about music for a good second here, and I was like, is it gonna get back to that?
I thought we were talking about bigger, more relatable things.
No, you were, but I just, you know what?
You're gonna rabbit hole the details of camp too much.
No, I thought it wasn't a bad thing. It was just like, I just thought I was, like, listening to, like, a good podcast conversation.
You
But it was
forgot it was a music
no, it was the
show?
I think it was the first time listening to, like, your podcast that, like, if you played me that and I'd never, like, I was a first time listener, I might have just thought it was a good conversational podcast and not known
That
it
doesn't
was
sound like a diss at all. It sounds like you were being nice.
it's not a diss,
I
that's
was
why
expecting a diss.
I prefaced that this isn't, like, a negative, like, this is just, like, a comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it was just interesting. I think it was the first time I've been listening, and it was like, that's all I wanted to say. It was my first time listening where, like, I was doing, you know,
I'm
I
gonna
was
soundbite that. This was my first time listening. We're on episode 46, and it was your first time listening.
don't do that. I'll kill you. Um,
Okay, I get it.
yeah, it was just like there's a moment where I was like, oh, this is like it's a good conversation,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I have to go back and listen again right away, but I feel like we were able to just touch on some larger, like, universal themes
Mhm.
about, like, loss of community and what that feels like, not just
Yeah,
music related, but it has so much to do and obviously tied into his
yeah.
journey and in the music community, but just what you kinda can go through and you don't realize it as people. Um,
You know what I felt like a
yeah.
little bit? This is such like a random, very specific example, but it's like it felt like the kind of like conversation that happens when like it's like I'll put it into like POV, but it's like POV. You guys are at like a mutual friend's like birthday party, and it's your first time meeting, and then you're like the two people who are like you meet for the first time and get talking, and then they're the two who stand by the drink table and talk through the entire party because you have so much to like
Oh,
share and talk about.
because you're the types that will, like, get deep with a
Yeah,
stranger right away at
yeah,
a party.
yeah.
So, yeah, you end up off to the side the whole
'Cause it
time?
was your first time talking to him, which at other times too, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you could tell based off, like
I've always been that guy at a party.
I know you have because 'cause you've talked about it in other episodes, I'm saying. But, like, at the bar,
You did
though
listen to other episodes.
shut up.
Okay. Nice.
Anyways, um, yeah, but it was
I'm not gonna show this video. I haven't shown a video of posting at all yet.
no.
And the irony is I was thinking before because I was just testing out using a good camera,
Yeah.
and then I thought I looked pretty good, plus the doctor told me I'm really healthy today, so I was gonna, like, flex for
Oh
the
my
camera,
gosh.
but then you just, um, subtly adjusted your bra strap, I think, so
No!
now I especially
I was
can't
fixing my
show the
back.
oh, it didn't look like
I
that.
can fix my bra strap too.
Well, I know it's the same movement, so then I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I guess I'm not I shouldn't this one."
Well, you can't anyways. You didn't ask me beforehand. I
I know. Maybe someday soon, though, we're gonna go to video.
ask me, man, we'll talk about
I
it.
know I'll have to
We can
ask, we'll
have an
talk
official
about it.
meeting, take me for
We'll
coffee.
have an official business meeting.
Okay.
Um, okay, did you have any other thoughts besides just the one that I thought was gonna be bad, but didn't turn out bad at all? Which
Yeah, you know what? I
appreciate.
had a couple, and then I also, as I do, look at that list.
I'm gonna just say again then while you're looking up for the list. Well, you had it there, but sorry, I had to get formal.
Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I blew major smoke up his rear end on the podcast, which I don't always do for people, because I was so pleasantly surprised by what I heard.
Mm,
Like, and it's very biased, and I get that this is very biased, right? Which is
yeah.
Glenn spent 10 straight years listening to Death Cab for Cuties,
Well, that's the other thing I was gonna pull up,
Transatlanticism,
man.
huh? And yeah, so and their Plans record, those 2 records basically spun in my top 3 for, like, 10 years of the early 2000s, like,
Mhm.
the aughts or whatever they call it. And like, the very first song I heard of his was called Colorado Low, and it literally sounds like it could come off the brand new
Yeah.
Death Cab, who just released a
Well, that's
record
what I was
too.
gonna pull up
Oh,
for
were
the
you?
listeners, was I found it this is, like, such a small point, but I found it so funny that right before you recorded, you texted mom and I, and you said, and I quote, "The guy I'm interviewing, is from Winnipeg and sounds exactly like a mix of Death Cab for Cutie and the Weakerthans." And then when I got home and mom and I were like, "Oh, how was it?" You were like, "Oh, guess like we were talking da da da. Oh, and some people that he listened to were Death Cab for Cutie,
Yeah, like, were literally
because
his
like
heroes that I
yeah,
literally pulled like, the 2 references were so deeply ingrained in his songs, like, the
yeah,
first 4 songs I heard, um, which were most of them not released yet, right, for the record coming out, but it was just a combination of the choice in the music and the layering and the arrangement, and the way the songs are written, the whole delivery of the lines to what would have to be there for the comparison, which is just the tone of his voice, right? Which is so just that whole thing was I was like, I guess I just felt like this is more legit
mm,
than I could have imagined. It's not like somebody parroting or
Yeah.
mimicking. I don't know where that word came from. I have to. Anyhow, um, yeah, it was just so legit. Like that was just and I'm like, I'm gonna listen. I knew at the moment. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna listen to this record a lot. I'm probably gonna listen to it a lot all year. Yeah, just someone doesn't usually fall in my lap that I didn't know before or hear before and make me feel like I need to listen to this record more.
Yeah.
Like I only have like the release link, which is like a private SoundCloud, and I've literally just been pulling up the website of that
Mm.
to listen to it
Yeah.
over and over.
I kind of hope when you.
So it is a bias. I
I
need to
know.
say it's a bias, but just the way anybody with their own personal bias would tell all their friends, I just found a new record you got to hear.
Yeah.
I'm telling all my friends I got a new record. That
Yeah.
you should hear.
Well, that's what I mean. Like when you were like kind of gassing him up right at the start, and you were like, "Oh, I don't usually do this." I feel like that's such like a
Not to
cliche.
start. I was like at least 30 minutes
Okay, well, it was just
in.
so good that time was passing so
Okay, thank
fast
you.
for me.
Appreciate it.
Anyways, but when you were like, complimenting him in his work, there was like just a small part of me that I was like, I really hope he like has or is going to listen to it like a few other episodes, not just one, to know like you like legit don't do that. You know what I mean?
He probably thinks I like kiss everybody's ass. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Because like if I was like a musician and I went on a music focused podcast and the host was like,
Oh yeah,
"Oh, I think
yeah.
you're so great. Oh, I don't
It's
usually
like I'm
tell
sure
people
he says
this."
that too.
Yeah, I'd feel like, yeah, right. But
Yeah, yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Um, yeah, either way, I just felt like it was important to do. Okay, what were you gonna
oh,
say?
oh, this is what I thought of, and then one of your little points touched on it.
Okay.
But it was to do with the song every week club.
Yeah,
Um, first point there, and even with like um his own radio show and stuff, like
yeah,
between those two things, did you know he had so many like mutual connects with you? Like so many.
yeah. I saw. I mean, obviously, I do research.
Mhm.
So in doing the research and pulling together past press and whatnot, it started to pop up. But sometimes half of that is necessary name dropping when you're promoting a record. Like the people who played on this record are also the people who play for
Mhm.
Begonia or William
Totally.
Prince or whoever. So that's kind of normal. But yeah, it sort of was on my radar, but it's different when it sort of comes out in conversation that you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, we like run in the same circles. We would probably hang out with the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why he DM'd you before Ken?
You know what? I never asked that question.
Because as soon as like
That's
when you
actually a
were
really good
talking about
question. I didn't think
Ooh.
about that.
when you were talking about the his radio, and you were talking about like, oh, have you had people from, where he lives and da and the first name was like Begonia, and then you
And then Liam,
yeah, and then also
Golden.
later then like yeah, Boy Golden and those people kept coming up. I was like, I bet because he follows them and probably pretty closely if they're friends, you were probably up on his media. Like probably he saw you the first time, but then when he saw you more
Oh
than
yeah,
once,
yeah,
you know
100%.
what I mean? Because he said like he's
If
shameless
he's
about
in,
DMing.
yeah, and if he's in songwriting club
And
with
if he's in
Liam, then
songwriting
yeah,
club, and so it's like your name probably came up, he probably looked you up, and then I was thinking like, oh, and then as soon as it was a second time, and there's like within his circle, people he songs right with, people he like maybe sees himself like on a similar level as.
yeah,
I was like, I bet that's what like I mean, not gave him the confidence. He said he's pretty shameless about DMing, but I was like, I bet you that was like his like
yeah,
green light for like, yeah, like this is an appropriate person to reach out to,
yeah, 100%. And
and means you're not getting shit on by people who are guests. Got a good rep going.
thank you. And it also means I should remind myself to like take seriously when people send you a DM. You know what I mean? And don't write it
Mhm.
off as like, all the people making their first single
Yeah.
ever wanting to get on a podcast and tell their story. But
So I was just think like the person DMing you, like
it's so hard to make a pitch.
it's hard to make a pitch, but it's also like like they already did half the work by like
Yep.
you know reaching out to you. Like that's the scary part. And
Yeah.
it's also like every time someone reaches out to you, I'm always like, you like a year can make such a difference in an artist's career like this. It's like you could interview someone like tomorrow, and a year from now they could be like performing for the Grammys. You know what I mean? Just like especially with social media.
Well, we've kind of talked about that indirectly as well, right? Which is
Mhm.
I had always felt like one of my skills
Was
earlier
predicting that.
when I was out on the road playing and when I was running the record label and when I was doing different promotion things. I just felt like I sort of had a good sense of talent. This is sounds terrible to say. It sounds like bragging, but
No, I was just gonna say I think I got that from you too.
I mean, people had told me that too at different times. So yeah. But anyhow, the point is like with this, like the people that I realized early, right? Like that I
Mhm.
wanted to, like even we just had like Jacob Brodovsky, right?
Yeah.
And he had been on my radar for a year.
Yeah.
And because I kind of knew something was special was happening and there was something special about him. And then like in that year he blew up at the same time we talked about Nolan Hoffman, who, I very early in the like right out of the gates at the start of the podcast,
Mhm.
I was like getting in touch with publicity and management team and
'Cause I remember you mentioned her, and then after I went to Zach Bryan and she was the opener,
yeah.
and
And
then she
yeah.
popped off.
Yeah, she just kept getting bigger and bigger tours and offers, and then the ability to nail down a time just kept dwindling, which is like how the business goes, which is
Yeah.
fine. But, and then there's just, you and I have talked, like, I think I always would want to reserve a portion of the show for people who are on their way up, not all for people
Mhm.
who have arrived or who are kind of at the top on their way down or
Yeah.
however they might describe themselves. But um, I've always wanted that equal balance, right?
Mhm.
And I even feel a bit weird using that sort of metaphorical language because the way we've discussed at length on the podcast about what the trajectory or the journey of an artist actually is, not in all
Yeah.
these terms of success, which is like I'm on the way up or I'm like climbing the rungs of the ladder or however you may. I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable with all those, but
Plus you don't have to.
inevitably, some people are early in the journey
Yeah.
in different ways, either in just the amount of years they put into it or the number of releases or the amount of successes they've had back, however you
Mhm.
define those. So yeah, either way, I just want people at all different stages.
Yeah.
And it's easy to skip over the ones who on the surface might look like they're early on and you feel a little more unsure about it
Mhm.
because there isn't enough evidence around, which is kind of what came up in that conversation about like, you know, what makes you a legitimate artist? Is it when somebody in the industry considers you're serious? No,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And that whole conversation that's kind of permeated this episode. I don't want to be that guy
Mhm.
who, who
It is
does the
hard
same
though
thing.
because like I was thinking even like I was thinking like a lot about that in the last couple weeks because it's like um even like it just in the framing of like this podcast, it's like, you would have no issue grabbing like a very small, like starting out artist. But I think for like, cause like obviously like, and this is what I mean. So like success is defined differently for like artists
Hmm.
everywhere.
Hmm.
And it's hard because in terms of like this podcast, like to be successful enough to be on the podcast, I think it's less about like fame or amount of records, all that, but it's like, they have to have enough to say to like fill 60 minutes. You know what I mean? Because I was thinking it's like that girl we saw performing at Bountiful a couple weeks ago and we went for
Oh
Ashley
yeah,
Eagles.
yeah.
And then I followed her on Instagram and seen that like she's actually performed with School of Rock at like
School of Song.
School Song. Oh, I watched that movie
Hmm.
recently.
Hmm.
School of Song, at Folk Fest, and then like has had like a really cute like house gig, and like she has a couple things like couple shows coming up this
Yeah,
summer that are
she's
like quite
working
small.
hard. She's grinding.
Exactly, but I'm like, it's just hard because like if you know reach out to her just to get a feeler of like you know, her story is or
Yeah.
what she might be able to talk about, and there's not enough, and then being like, you know, I'm not gonna have you on.
Yeah.
It's like a very difficult like line of like you don't want to be the dictator of like who's
Yeah.
gonna be able to like be featured or progress, but
No, yeah, it's more actually the flip side, which is I want to pay attention, read careful, and rely on my experience to sort of know how to interpret
mhm,
what you see and what the signals and the output is. And I'm also wanting, I sincerely want to be able to say with everybody that I would have in that sort of pocket of that down the road be like, see, I told you so,
yeah,
right? In the best way, not in any sort of snarky, ego, you know, filling way. Yeah, just you know, that's important to me.
yeah,
And it's fun. Like I'm watching. Like I didn't know Kelsey Main before she had been pitched to me, and she's from Ontario, country artist,
mhm,
and then had just a really great conversation, and now follow her socials all the time and see her getting some bigger offers on some bigger
mhm,
stages after a year of working so hard releasing singles. Of one of the hardest workers on social media. Um, didn't know who she was before, and
yeah,
now I'm a fan, and I really think she's going to be successful. And I think, yeah, lots of things like that. I love being around. I think seeing people develop is always going to be my passion in
yeah,
all of this more than anything else. So
super cool.
super cool, man.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thanks for having me
Thanks
on
for
Post Fame.
coming to Post Fame with Alexi
I
for
appreciate it.
episode number
I like
46.
I like the upstairs more than the downstairs.
I like it
Nice
too. I think
change.
we need to,
Kick people out so we can just have the room
yeah,
ourselves.
kick mom out, send her to different various appointments, and make her,
Okay.
yeah, please.
Yeah. The dog eating chills while we're here.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, we'll talk about video another time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you for my episode number 47.
See you for 47. Bye.
Bye.